It's where you get a job. You've got a jobs list. You've got your car going out on track, and consider a lap here is over 8 minutes. It's not about putting the laps in, it's putting time on the car. We've had the cars pretty much rebuilt, new brakes, potentially new gearboxes, race engines going in. This session is about ensuring that everything that you unbolted has now been rebolted back together. And if you have got a problem that will manifest, you want it to manifest in the next hour and 15 so that you can rectify it. There's nothing worse than being an hour into the race and then a problem, a silly problem like an electrical connector or something can destroy your race. This is what this session is about. They've done all the prep work with regards to setup. The cars are where they want them to be going forward into the race. Tyre data has been accrued. Everything is done. This is just a systems check.
OK, but the car we were interested in particular was the number 80 Winward Racing Mercedes. That was one that departed practice not in the greatest of form, Johnny. That's not just a check it's all back in one piece, it's put it back in one piece. How did they get on?
Well, it was a 2 a.m. finish this morning for 6 or 7 guys. I had a good chat with a gentleman called Herbert, who is actually on the number 3 car, which is the Verstappen Racing example. But I think it was a case of just anybody mucking in. They changed the rear left, which was obviously very damaged at something like 45 degrees. Massive suspension damage there. They've also changed the front left because it kind of went in at that angle. And there was a little bit of scarring on the brake disc and the suspension. And he said, in those cases, you just change it all because you don't know whether there's hairline cracks that are not yet discovered. The exhaust, the manifold that sits in the sill has all had to be replaced as well. So, I mean, yeah, they've been up all night already ahead of a 24-hour race.
You've got to check the whole car, though, because that energy transfers through those wheels into the cars, and you can have something that will manifest a crack on the opposite side to where the damage was caused. So you really have to go through the car with a fine-tooth comb if you've got the time. And unfortunately, in racing, when you're a mechanic, the clock ticks until the next green flag, and if there is time there to do a job, you will do that job, even if it is through the night.
Right, good to see, actually, the number 80 was already out on track with the driver who dropped it. Greasy conditions. First lap, Maro Engel, the man who literally has been bulletproof for the past 15 years in GT3 racing. He has been the benchmark for so many of the young guns. He slid off on the exit of Hatzenbach, just clipped a curb, bounced oblique blow with the barrier on the left-hand side, and then as the track was going left around the following corner, he ran along the verge.
And that clipping of that curb you describe on the inside, clipping that apex, he was possibly a centimetre of steering too much to the right, just a centimetre. That's how marginal that error was. And he's probably, I think you said this yesterday, Bruce, when we witnessed that out for ourselves. I think you said he's probably gone across that curb a million times now. And just that one, the way that the car bounced off the curb was just so unfortunate. You know what? A fairy tale story in the making there for the number 8, isn't it?
Yeah, not so much for the mechanics, but yeah,
they're not really feeling it very. I bet they wish they had a magic wand last night, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So dry conditions right now, but just say it after the heavy rain on Thursday night, Friday morning, yesterday morning was when this accident happened. It was the smallest of slip-ups, but right now, probably with the jazziest livery in the entire field. I was saying to Johnny this morning as we looked down at the number 80, it's blue over gold with a dragon pattern and just cutting through the back entrance to the pits. What the drivers are allowed to do is don't have to do the full 25 kilometres. They can go around the part of the Grand Prix circuit that you use ordinarily. Instead of turning double left onto the Nordschleife, you can come back into the pits or just route on around the pits. That's what's happening this time. So you don't have to come in. You can just come onto the start, finish straight, go around again. So those are the initial checks. So 2 or 3 of those, then back into the garage.
And what we could be seeing there is them not going back in the garage, Bruce, but putting 2 laps of heat into the tyres. We forgot to mention the ambient temperature at the moment, 6 degrees. That is blooming cold. And they will want to get those tyres up to an operating temperature and operating pressure before they venture out onto the Nordschleife and find out where the damp patches are, because there will be damp patches out there.
That was intriguing. On the 911 numbered Manthey Racing Porsche, I can't see Matt Campbell's name on the roof.
No, because he's only a reserve. He's a reserve entry in that car, because he caught us out. We came here with a three driver names on the list with Kevin Estre leading the gang.
I'm looking at an entry list here, and Matty's there, but he's only going to step in presumably then if something goes wrong with the other 3 drivers. Maybe one feels unwell or needs a bit more sleep. But it's good to have a 4th driver, but yeah, not necessarily going to see Matt in the rotation full time.
No, so Can Guven, the Turkish racer who's based in Germany, and Thomas Preining, the Austrian star, the other two drivers in that car. But I've written it in red ink on my notes, so he's only a reserve, OK?
Gotcha. Yeah,
there we go.
Oh, red ink, that's important.
By the way, the 80 car that we've spoken at length about already, due to start on the grid later in 25th position. We were speaking about it potentially starting 20th, because remember there were 20 cars in top qualifying 2. But I wasn't factoring in the 5 that had already gone into top qualifying 3 as well. So actually there were then 25 cars or 24 cars in front of it after Maro Engel wasn't able to set a time. So that it's all zeros next to his name, and therefore he will start from way back, right in the middle of the SP9s. Which, you know, people go, well, does qualifying really matter for a 24-hour race? And I can see the argument why it doesn't, but I'd much sooner start on the front row than back in 25th.
If you like, I could explain the qualifying format, but I tell you what, it's so complicated and convoluted. We have got it behind us, and one of the cars that's drawn so much attention is Saug Motoren's BMW Z4. Think back about a dozen years in GT3 terms. And the Z4 was a car that didn't have a V8 engine, but it was created accordingly to race in GT races, and it just makes one of the best sounds. And certainly long-standing German fans have a very, very soft spot for that car, and quite rightly so. And it's just great to have a little blast of the past. And of course, GT3 is now a historic racing category as well, largely for the early cars from 2006 to 2013, and they are going so strong. But right now, if you look at historic stuff, you will see some Z4s, but I like the fact it's in the mix. Don't forget, of course, the Nürburgring 24 and the long-distance Nürburgring races for years, until a couple of years ago. It's still racing in historic circles, but not now in the big one. And of course, if this is your first time looking at the Nürburgring 24 hours, it's 24 hours long, but it has about 21 different classes of car. We talk a lot about the top class, SP9, which is for GT3 cars, and even that is divided into pros, pro-ams and ams, but we have everything down to road-based cars. So there is going to be a huge speed differential, and as I say that, we get sight of one of the most popular cars in the entire field, the Dacia Logan. It's bright blue and acid green, and I think it's the underdog. It's the David in a field of many Goliaths, as a Brazilian driver once said to me, or Goliath as we know it. Very well indeed.
James Atkinson on the collective group asks if Matt Campbell is a reserve that is going to possibly be used. Has he done his 2 qualifying laps? That is the answer is yes. He was in the car quite a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah. I don't think there's a problem there, because you could do it in either qualifying 1, 2 or 3. There wasn't. I never discovered a rule in the supplementary regulations that said everyone had to do a certain amount of mileage in the night session, which was qualifying 2, that ran from 8 p.m. till 11:30 on Thursday night. As long as you'd done 2 laps in any one of those qualifying sessions, but of course SP9 only got access to qualifying 1 and qualifying 2, so all of that had to be done on the Thursday. But I agree with you.
He was out in that real torrential rain, and he scraped that second lap in when everybody was tippy-toeing around, when it was absolutely lashing it down.
So it will have been zero help for him in terms of how the car's behaving.
He's overqualified, if anything, by being out there in that.
Yeah, in terms of his experience, absolutely. But, you know, the regs are there to say do 2 laps so you're familiar with the car and we're familiar with the circuit. There's argument to say you could have actually walked quicker than the speed that Matt was doing, but, you know, at least he's been round.
Well, at least he knows exactly. There's been quite a lot of resurfacing, how the water sits on various parts of the track. If you wonder why we're not talking about lap times, it's no one has set one yet. That's the dint of having a 25-kilometre lap. Quite a few cars, as we mentioned, going in and out of the pits after a short loop around the Grand Prix circuit. But right now, riding on board with Maro Engel, this is a car that's been rebuilt. We've been talking about track conditions look fine. Yesterday morning we had strong sunshine and deep shadow, but it was very wet overnight. We did have rain last night, but nothing like it was on Thursday into Friday.
And they're shrouded by wind as well, Bruce, so they don't dry up. But it's a good point that you make. It's almost 20 minutes before we see a lap time that registers. We've got to go round on your out lap, then we cross the line to start the first timed lap, which, so a fast lap here is just over 8 minutes, so it's going to be towards 20 minutes before we see any lap times. But on saying that, it's morning warm-up. Lap times are completely irrelevant. We're not going to go for a qualifying hard lap. We're going to be looking for that, making sure that if there have been changes to cars, and we'll get the balance of performance in a moment, but if there have been changes, because race engineers tend to deliberate, even the car on pole position, they'll have sat in the debrief, the engineer's looking at the data and he's going, think we can do with a little bit more positive camber. And you go, why? Why do we need more? No, we're on pole. You know, I think we can. It's all about getting the tyres to work across the race stint this weekend.
And across a range of weather. I mean, you were talking about tea time. You didn't specify if that's 4 or 5 o'clock. Our race starts at 3
I'm
o'clock.
English, so it's 3.
Oh, was it 3? I don't have high tea at 5. Okay, right. Just looking at weather percentages. 35% of rain at 1 o'clock, 39, there's a trend coming on here at 2, 3 o'clock it's 41% and it keeps on rising, 5 o'clock up to 71%, so expect a wet evening, and when we cross over into darkness it eases off a little bit, but it's still around between 45 and 55%, so, but what you don't know, that's the banking for an hour. It might be 5 minutes within an hour. We've had showers, we've had hail. Hail comes through for about 2 or 3 minutes, and that's that, isn't it? But it leaves a very, very dangerous track.
Remember yesterday's, Bruce, when we were covering the DHML, or is it DHL? Sorry, got that around the wrong way. The forecast was for rain at about 5 o'clock. The rain came at 3 o'clock, and it kind of spoilt the pleasure of watching those historic cars. It could arrive early, couldn't it? It could arrive at, you know, we might get some dry running at the very start of this race, but it's going to change.
Looking at my little rain cloud logos, it's across 23 of the 24 hours of the race ahead of us. Okay, that's all. So go back to compromise setups. How wet is it going to be? But also, we were talking a lot about track temperature yesterday because it stayed resolutely low. Even when the sun came out, and it did come out from time to time, you felt a bit of warmth if you're walking around outside on your back, but it wasn't translating into drying the track particularly.
3 degrees was the midweek prediction for tonight's low temperature. I need to get an update on that, but it's going to be in that kind of ballpark, 3-4 degrees, and that's the bigger concern, less so the amount of moisture that's on the road, but how you're going to retain tyre temperature, particularly on a wet tyre and a harder compound, to make it sticky, to make it work around here. Yes, speeds are going to be reduced, but nevertheless, through the sector that Maro Engels just cleared, you need downforce, and therefore you need speed, and you need absolute trust in that rubber beneath you.
You absolutely do. Right, 5 degrees is the coolest temperature overnight just before we get to sun up. But we were concerned if it was going to be sitting at around 3 and you had a lot of moisture here, we would have a very misty morning. And if the heat's not rising fast, that's going to keep the track cold, keep the track slippery. Right, still waiting for the fastest cars to come around instead of flying that.
Can I just finish on the weather?
Please do, yeah.
You mentioned a temperature of 3 to 5 degrees overnight, Johnny. That's when we can create fog. And how many years now? When was this race fogged off? Was that 3 years ago or 4 years ago? When there was
I think.
There was a red flag and a huge delay. And we didn't
2 years ago.
We didn't get the race restarted, did we? We ran behind the safety car
to the end
2 years ago. This is we're in May. It's still springtime in Europe. And the change in the temperature overnight as the sun begins to it really gets cold during the night, and then we have that temperature inversion.
Right, what's it like from a driver's viewpoint? We get a lot of onboard camera footage, but this one, we're looking on board it's the fantastic Motoren Z4, and the helmet is actually carrying the driver. The helmet is the camera is within the helmet. It's not on the side, that's not allowed, but this is very, very much the eye view. And of course, what we're getting now is going from light to dark to shade. But the good news is it's dry all around. And of course, any lap where you're viewing what the driver is viewing around the Nürburgring Nordschleife is very special.
I love that car.
Yeah,
I love that Z. I love the BMW Z4. Any iRacing fans out there, and there's probably a circuit surrounded by them, that is now a legacy car. And there's often, I'll just break out that legacy Z4 BMW and give it a run around the Nürburgring because I love the sound of it. It looks great. Front engine, huge bonnet out front. Very, very balanced car. They stopped developing it, so the tyre model on it is a little bit tricky on iRacing. But here we are, bringing out the legacy cars in real life here at the Nürburgring 24 hours. I'm all for it.
So this is Henry Valkenhorst, and where he's looking at any point. So it's not always at the road in front. The camera moves to the mirrors as Henry peers to see if there's any quicker cars coming to the rear of the BMW Z4. So the Saug Motoren motorsport car that he shares with Julian Rehr, Valentin Lachenmeyer and Christian Scherer. And Henry Valkenhorst, as you say, bringing out this heritage car. I had a word with Alexander Sims earlier in the week, who's in the number 16 Scherer Sport Audi, and he must have a very good memory because he recognised me. And I said, I think the last time we actually had a word together was 2014, when you nearly won the British GT Championship, sharing with Marco Attard. And because he missed 2 races at Snetterton, he wasn't a champion, and Marco was a solo champion in the end. And I went, you actually remember that? And me from 12 years ago. And he went, yeah, I think that was right. But that was the car. That's relevant because this is the car they had that year when it was absolutely at the top of GT3 performance.
You notice he's got a camera there, a rear view camera. However, he's still looking to his mirrors.
Yeah.
And every time before he turns into the apex, he's still looking to his mirrors. Now, that's muscle memory. And I remember when I went from racing Formula Fords to karting, even though there's no mirrors on the kart, before I turned in, I would look to the right and think, why am I doing that? But I would just look to the right. It was just muscle memory, and that's exactly what we can see there with that. You can see the tilt of his head. But did you see how off the throttle he was? Just basically feeling his way around on half throttle, feeling where the grip is on a cycling lap, and just seeing where, as you described, Bruce, those damp patches don't disappear readily, do they? They're within the trees. They're shielded from the wind. So there's no real drying out, and especially at 6 degrees ambient, that's going to stay damp. And just look at the dust and muck he's throwing up there.
Yeah, anything still within the curbing. And yesterday we had, particularly in the long distance historic race, we had a 3-hour race for the historic cars. I mean, quite a few of them were going off. Conditions became very, very difficult. So there is quite a lot of muck, but I think that's very sensible. Henry Walkenhorst, not just a great racer, of course, he's a team entrant too, but most of his cars are Aston Martins. For years before that, they were BMWs, but getting a lot of cheers around the track when you get that V8 at full throttle. But you're quite right, Joe. He was definitely pussyfooting around the back part of the circuit as you were around places like Bergwerk, and then he started to open it up a little bit, just to entertain the fans, of course.
The other interesting thing, the fabulous thing about this race is that it's done not with a control tyre. So there's a great mixture of tyre manufacturers that you see just within the SP9 class before you even think about the other categories. And Valkenhorst have become aligned more recently with Yokohama, and some of them are with Pirelli tyres as well. There aren't that many Dunlop shod cars in this race, but this Z4, I notice, is. Now we have the brand new Dunlop car from the Schnabel proprietors, if you like, or preparers of cars, and that's the number 17 car of the old Falcon team. But that team is now split between Falcon Rubber and Dunlop, and there is at least one other Dunlop runner then in this number 36 car. Down the Dottinger Hoor, the BMW Z4 will go. One of the Hyundai hatchbacks, hot hatches in behind as well, that tend to run in the TCR category. In fact, one is in SP4T, and that is the Ascona-driven car, which I don't think has ventured out onto the main Nordschleife yet. No, it hasn't. So just done laps around the Grand Prix track. But the 830, that's likely to be Mark Basseng in behind then, who's just now headed along the Dottinger Hoor.
Talking of TCR cars, just had some message that one has had that thing happen in warm-up, that maybe it's best it happened in warm-up. The number 577 Asbest Racing Cupra Leon has pulled to a halt not very far into the lap, just down at the Goodyear hairpin, formerly the Dunlop Care, at the bottom of the hill on the Grand Prix loop. Hopefully it'll get back. Hopefully it's a quick fix, but I guess, Joe, that's the very point. Yeah,
hopefully it's not something that will take longer than the space we have between now and the race start, and they can rectify that. I've got a quick question about the Z4. Stein Kleissens asks, does that Z4 still come under GT3 homologation, or is this a special dispensation to allow into the field?
It's under GT3 homologation.
It is under GT3 homologation still, isn't it?
There is an incredible figure that I've completely forgotten. I apologise if I'm way out. The sheer number of different models from the manufacturers across since 2006, the start of GT3, I think it's 49 different manufacturer and car model combinations.
And the other thing about tyres, certain classes do have a fixed tyre, and I'm not quite sure that certainly the Cup class, the Porsche Cup class, the Cup 2 class has a designated tyre formula. I think it's a Michelin. I might be wrong. I'll clarify that, but yes, it's certainly the SP9s are an open tyre formula, which I like. It just adds another layer of, well, certainly for us, it adds another layer of something to talk about over 24 hours. But yeah, I do like that, and it becomes it's certainly with the race that we've got in front of us this afternoon, we're going to be, I would imagine, the suspension setup with regards to the amount of camber that you're running, the amount of caster that you're running, is going to be governed towards a wet tyre. In the wet, you're not creating as much grip, so you haven't got as much lean in the car, in the tyre, so it doesn't grip and lean the car. So the amount of camber is reduced for a wet setting, and pretty much if there's weather in the air, then you're going to, and certainly the way that the weather forecast is, with, as Bruce said, almost a full wet race forecast. These cars are going to be set up like that, and with regards to tyres, I think they're all pretty equal, aren't they? There isn't really, we haven't really identified a tyre advantage. Maybe in the race we're going to see if there is. Some wet tyres are better than other manufacturers' wet tyres. Yeah. Maybe we might see that being a factor.
I mean, Michelin are renowned for having a phenomenal wet weather tyre. So I think particularly at GT3 level, it's fairly striking for me that a lot of the teams you would note down before we got underway of potential winners are all running on the French rubber. So yes, there's some variances here and there, but I think it's a shy away from the potential performance of Michelin in the night and in the wet. You'd be a fool, frankly. The number 1 BMW's just gone fastest, by the way. We caught sight of Laurens Vanthoor in the number 24 Lion Speed GP Porsche, who has just completed a full lap. But yes, it's Farfus at the moment setting the pace, although he's only had one flying lap, 8:43.9 to give you an idea. That is some way off the times we were seeing in qualifying on a full fuel load, nevertheless, because each of the top qualifying sessions needed to be started with the cars full of fuel. Winward Racing's Mercedes, the number 3 car from Verstappen Racing, goes second fastest for Jules Gounon, and Jake Hill in the number 18 Lion Speed car, marginally faster than Laurens Vanthoor. Actually, there's 4 seconds between those two Lion Speed GP Porsches, getting some early mileage into this hour-long warm-up session. Yeah,
what we have to remember, of course, is these were effectively outlaps. And the flying ones are coming. You mentioned the times in qualifying. We had 3 drivers, the top 3 drivers in top qualifying 3, 8 minutes 11. So this next time around for these cars, we'll see how close they are to that. But your point, Joe, it's not about grinding out the fastest lap you possibly can. That's not what warm-up is about. And still you can see cars weaving their way from side to side, trying to get heat in. There isn't as much breeze as there was yesterday. It really became quite windy. But certainly I think the track is still keeping its treasures to itself at the moment. It's certainly not drying out, but images around the backside of the track, full sunshine. Ben Green at the moment driving a Shearer Sport Audi. The Audi R8 LMS GT3 model, it's in the Evo 2 element, has just been the backbone of GT3 racing. And anybody who follows the Nürburgring Langstrecken series, you'll understand how effective they are. And Christopher Haase has been such a star. He's gained more publicity, 20 years as a racing driver, this year alone, for fighting against, down this very stretch of the track, the Dottingher, fighting, overtaking, undertaking, whatever, with Max Verstappen, as Max has come to do the NLS races to gain experience for this. And he just said, it's crazy, isn't it? And then he's right at the top end in qualifying yesterday. So well done to Christopher. Just a little note for those who started their race career in Dacia, there is hope. 20 years ago, that's what Christopher Haase was racing, and he then very quickly went up the order. But it's just nice. And if you do ever get a chance to watch an NLS race, they're 4 hours long. They're really good build-up for this. But again, Johnny's point about freedom of tyres, the manufacturers come and they try them out. The tyre constructors come in as well. And of course, that championship goes from the cold at the start of the season to the cold at the end. But you have every weather format in between. So really valuable testing time.
And Stein Claeson's on the, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right there, Stein, makes a point that some teams have run one manufacturer for a wet tyre and gone to another manufacturer. It's completely open, completely illegal, completely legal to do that.
Freudian slip there.
And I've worked in international karting. I worked for Terry Fullerton, where if the Dunlop was quicker because the wind changed direction on the back straight, you then had to have thumbs like a blind cobbler because you were changing tyres between sessions when it was an open tyre formula. Yes, well, I'm a big fan of open tyre formulas, and if we are trying to get an enhanced performance by going to another manufacturer, it's perfectly legal to do so. Unless, of course, you're contracted and you're getting your tyres for a subsidised fee or indeed free, then you may be stifled somewhat if that's the case.
Yeah, they're more than round and black, so much more, and particularly in low temperatures. And here at the Nürburgring, as it's going to be wet at various points, if not almost all points through the race, you just got to be sure your tyre's going to work, not just in damp conditions and full wet conditions, but also in cool conditions. It makes such an enormous difference. And so the mileage that people got in March and April in the early rounds of the NLS, definitely worth having. Fastest car is still was Augusto Farfus, but Manti Racing car number 911. Remember that one, the Grello. That's now fastest of all. Certain driver Kevin Estra, never knowingly slow around the Nürburgring, but that's still 8 minutes 42, so that is a first flyer, but the faster flyers are going to be the second flyers right now. But again, don't forget, some of the teams possibly still wanting to rotate their drivers through this warm-up session. It's only an hour long, and bear in mind, an average lap time around here for the classes, the range, the median's about 10 minutes. So you don't get many laps for any of the drivers, and the pro teams are tending to put just one driver in, possibly two, to run this session, certainly not rotating through 3 or 4.
It's a very, very green racetrack. We're seeing some of the drivers now pushing a little bit more forcefully through the turns, finding out where the grip is in these sort of green early stages. It's still quite early here, just coming up to 25 past 10 on Saturday morning, race warm-up. Always a session where you pretty much, you're not just going out there for a bit of fun. You're not just going out there to drive the track. You have got a jobs list to get through, and these drivers are out, and the engineers will be wanting the drivers to get some heat, some energy into the tyres. They'll be wanting to check on those last-minute adjustments, and obviously there's also the systems checks that's going on from the service process that we went through yesterday afternoon and into the evening.
Right, here's a little thing. This is from number 77 BMW crew, Thorsten Schubert. He runs the car. Of course, we're running the soft tyres in this kind of weather and trying to preheat them thoroughly, your point entirely, so they're up to temperature. Then we hope there aren't any wet patches and the temperature stays inside the tyres. And I've just heard a message that Hohenrein, right at the end of the lap, next to Tiergarten, just had a little spit of rain already.
Oh, really?
Back of the track, when you're talking Adenauer Bridge, that's in sunshine, but the majority of the circuit looks actually a few little drops of rain on the windscreen as we ride with Augusto Farfus. Only little ones, though.
This is Galgenkopf, not a million miles away from Hohenrein. The Hohenrein chicane is the very last bit of the Nordschleife as it links to the Grand Prix track after Tiergarten. So it's raining just as we appear to our right from our commentary position. I don't think we mentioned Phil Dorr absolutely obliterating a red and white cone on the Grand Prix track in his Dorr Motorsport McLaren Artura. And that car, or was that Ben Dorr, in fact? No, it was Ben Dorr, wasn't it, in the GT3 car? So number 69 in the Bitburger 0.0 backed car, the 720S, just going a tad wide on the approach to the first significant left-hander on the Grand Prix track. You are allowed tyre warmers in this race, which is a much more rare thing these days. So you can put them in ovens. You can also put them in tyre blankets that are plugged in, although the rule in the regulations when they were going top qualifying 3 from the start-finish line was that you could bring pre-warmed tyres, but they couldn't still be plugged in the blankets. So you can do that in the garage or at the back of the garage and then bring them so that they carry some warmth, but nothing like they would do when you set off on a fast lap.
Well, actually, here's a prescient comment, a continuation from Thorsten Schubert, boss of Schubert Motorsport. He said, we heat the tyres up to 90 degrees Celsius, so they're already well warmed through, and for at least 1 to 1.5 hours, depending on the type of tyre warmer. But it's all digitally controlled, so nobody has to get up early anymore. And it can be monitored remotely. So they come in, toast in the toaster, tyres already up to temperature.
They're sat at breakfast and they'll switch the tyre warmer on from their breakfast table at their hotel or wherever. Let's switch the tyre warmer on. Yeah, okay, they'll be nice and toasty when we get in. And we're not just heating the tyre, we're heating the wheel as well. So the whole thing has got a chunk of heat in it. However, bring it out of that warmer, it immediately starts to cool. It's called physics. Stick in with your science lessons at school, everybody, if you want to get involved in motor racing and any form of engineering or anything. And immediately you take it out the warmer, that starts cooling down. The moment you put it on the surface of the floor, it's dissipating heat from it. Yeah. So you've got to then get it out on that car as quickly as possible. Now, under normal circumstances, at what I would call a conventional racetrack and a conventional race, you would bring the tyre warmers out on their trolley, on that oven trolley, to the garage door. So the regulations are they've got to be out of the tyre warmers before they go on the apron. However, when you've got a packed garage with 4 cars where you can really barely fit 2, you've jammed in 4 teams, you haven't got room. So like Johnny said, they are coming from out back. They've begun to cool down, and they're probably, by the time they go on, I don't know, 6 degrees ambient, they're going to lose the heat very quickly. So you get them on the car and get that car out there and start getting some energy through them as quickly as possible, so that you can accrue some relevant data going forward to where you want the tyre to operate. And Bruce, is it relevant at all? Because already we've got the rain coming.
Yeah, already it's coming. But also, when you walk around the paddock with this many cars competing in this event, the placement of where the team transporters are. Some are immediately behind the garages, but not everybody for the 161 teams could be close. So some of them have to push it some distance through the paddock. There are people, the fans are milling around. So, again, time is lost. But I certainly like the thing that Torsten Schubert was saying about at least you can switch them on remotely. So
I like that.
You don't get the, it's the 24-hour race, so you're going to be up for 36 hours. And you two, by the way, are nipping in early to start heating the tyres. Oh, yeah. Boss.
yeah, you're in for 6. Yeah, that would be the 21st century motorsport here with remote tyre ovens that can be switched on from the hotel. I kind of like that idea.
Everything's linked to your phone these days. You can get an app for most stuff, and Wi-Fi operated tyre ovens or tyre blankets, incredible. I dread to say this, but there was a balance of performance update, another bulletin that came out this morning, and conveniently, they issue the sheet, the officials, but they don't tell you what they've changed it from. So you've always got to refer back to the previous document as well. The Lamborghini Huracan, which is fast, it's locked out the front 2 positions. So the front row is all Lamborghini, and the next one is going to start from 6th position, the Conrad example, car number 7, but it's a pole position for the 84 Red Bull team apt car of Luca Engstler, who did the time, an 8:11.123, Mirko Bortolotti and Patrick Niederhauser, and they will start alongside Marco Mappelli, Nicky Katzberg and Nick Yellerly, who all had a go at top qualifying yesterday as well. It was Marco Mappelli's time, an 8:11.468, that put him second, and as a result of possibly showing a bit too much performance, they are now strapped with a massive extra 5 kilos compared to how they run in qualifying, and they have reduced the restrictor diameter by 0.5 millimetre. 0.5 millimetre. This is the fine-tuning that we are talking. The BMW, which is not a turbocharged car, has 10 extra kilos, so that's double pegged back, if you like, compared to the Lamborghini. There's also an extra 5 kilos for the Porsche 911 Evo 992. And a slight turbocharger change, or no, not turbo, beg pardon, restrictor change to the Ford Mustang, but I haven't worked out whether that's narrower or wider yet. Bear with me, listeners. I know this is fascinating stuff, but even this late on in the week, the officials, the balance of performance Clark is not happy, and this has to be the final adjustment, surely, unless we do have one between warm-up and the race. But yeah, one issued bright and early this morning.
Undoubtedly, a 0.5 millimetre less air going into the engine will have a minor sort of scientific effect on that. However, the kind of stifling by a 0.5 millimetre further restrictor is going to be marginal, because you can still be disadvantaged by your driver missing a braking point by a couple of metres, and you'll lose the same amount of time. I suppose that it's all about marginal gains and marginal disadvantages, isn't it? Because the more marginal disadvantages that you are being given. Plus, I think I heard about 25 kilograms is the amount of weight before you really see a significant change in the way that a car will react to that added weight. 5 kilograms, yeah, again, the science of it, the minute science of that, of breaking 5 extra kilograms and accelerating 5 extra kilograms is going to be there, and it's going to be, but the actual discernible feel of what that will do to that car remains to be seen. I'm interested to see just how much that affects the Lamborghinis.
I'm just going to put one thing right, because I mentioned the BMW. That is a turbocharged car. I was in the wrong column. So the turbocharged cars that are listed in the balance of performance, the Ferraris, whether it's an original or an Evo, the Aston Martin Vantage, the BMW M4, the McLaren, and the Vantage AMR GT3 as well, but I can tell you that there's been no adjustment to turbo boost for any of those cars. It's all been done with either the addition of a bit of weight or the narrowing of the air restrictor.
One little rather random thought when trying to sort the balance of performance is it's very hard when you've got all the cars out on the track across all the classes. Once you got to top qualifying, at least we had the cars from the top class, SP9, along with cars of similar performance. So it was suddenly down to 49 cars. And as we went through, if you're looking at a lap, even the very best drivers will make one or two mistakes around 25 kilometres. Then you factor in other traffic, it's very hard to do it. You can look at the sector times, and that's what you have to do. You have to just average it out, because I honestly reckon that any time you're on a busy track, you're going to have 2 or 3 corners minimum where you're held up by some back markers, and other moments when you're not having the optimum line because of weather, because of going past someone. So it's super difficult on a circuit as long as this, 25 kilometres. If it's a 5-kilometre circuit, you get closer to the purest of laps at some point in every session. However, that's their job. It's the job of someone with an abacus, or better still, even a computer.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say, Bruce. You can tell you're a journalist and I'm not. You said it so much more eloquently.
I thought you said it so much better than I did.
I don't know. Between the two of us, we'll muddle
We'll
through.
crack it.
Yeah, we'll muddle through.
Lauren Heinrich's now been plugged into the 24 Lion Speed GP car. That's the car we're concentrating on now, and he's just crossed the line to go a little quicker than his teammate Laurens Vanthoor. That's an 8:50.8. Thomas Preining tops the charts in warm-up for as much as it counts in another Porsche 911, the Grello car. And Preining, I don't know whether he was genuinely struggling in top qualifying 3 on that second lap, or whether that was just a bit of tactics from Porsche to not show too much of performance. But there were a few. I've re-watched particularly the second lap from Thomas from top qualifying yesterday, and it was quite untidy. And he was up the curb, and he was missing apex, he was missing clipping points. Now there's a slight drama for the 519. I only say that because he's a masterful driver, and that was either a genuine struggle, because where did it qualify? 8th position in the end with an 8:13.9, the Grello car, or as I say, they are just keeping their powder dry, not wanting to draw attention to any performance that they might have hidden away. This is one of the VT2 Heckentrieb cars. So for the rear-wheel drive VT2 cars, the Toyota Supra.
Mainly a sort of left rear tyre coming off the rim sort of problem.
Possibly.
As the Supra. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but to my eye, I reckon that's what I'm looking at. Blue and yellow tyre coming off. So for the crew there, I say the Toyota Supra is a model that just gets more and more popular around the ring. For years, Toyo tyres with Ring Racing have been running them, but other people have also worked out in GT4 form. It's pretty cool.
And that is Lauren Heinrich. Lauren Heinrich has either tripped over or had connection from...
on the Grand Prix circuit somewhere, very early.
277, maybe, the BMW. I'm going to type that into my list. That is a Ravenel BMW 318 Ti. And yeah, it's the left-hand turn, the link section from the Grand Prix Strecker. As Heinrich flashed the lights, he went to the high side, and the BMW is trying to complete a Grand Prix lap, whereas the Porsche wants to get onto the Nordschleife. And a confusion. It's like a lane change on a motorway there. One wants to go right, the other wants to go left, and they're in the wrong places, Joe.
I think the BMW was trying to get out of the way of the Porsche, expecting him to come down his left-hand side.
I think so
By
too.
the time the BMW driver had taken his eyes off his mirrors to make that move, the Porsche was already alongside on the right, and that was unfortunate. What did Hugh Chamberlain used to say, boys? Nothing
Pine's a
ever
pine.
good. Yeah, apart from pine's a pine. Nothing ever good comes from warm-up. The car that we saw, the Toyota that we saw limping back with the rear tyre, under race conditions, that car would have made its way to the pits. However, discretion definitely the part of valour. The reason why he's pulled off to the left with just a puncture is because he didn't want to risk any further damage on that car. Get the car recovered.
He probably wouldn't have even got back to the pits before the end of the session. So absolutely sensible thing to do. 2 minutes remain. Sorry, Johnny.
That's Leo Geisler in the Ravenel Motorsport SP3 BMW. Amazingly, Lauren Heinrich got in the pits. So he, I think, had ended up pointing in the right direction, i.e. the wrong direction to the flow of traffic, to actually drive slightly against the flow and access the pit lane. So thankfully the Lion Speed car doesn't have to do another lap, potentially wounded after that contact. I mean, it's not going to be serious, but that is a headache now for the hours that sit between, what are we, nearly 20 to 11, and the race begins at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Right, code 60.
Hatzenbach.
Hatzenbach going, from the Vidal chicane. onwards through to Hocheichen. So Hatzenbach through to the point at which you can finally breathe back in and start to open it up without corners. So a Mustang and a McLaren 720S. Biding their time, they will get to a couple more twists and then they can open the throttle, go over to Flugplatz and Schwedenkreuz and really open them up.
I've been trying to mention this for a few minutes now, boys. 102 cars have come out for warm-up. That's not a full field of
We could add another 60 to that, or 59.
Yes, we can. And a bit of British interest here. Alex Brundle is out in the Mulliner Motorsport Porsche. He's finally come out. He's into Sector 3 now, but that, again, that's just a bit of a research mission on a systems check, I would think, at this stage, with what, just over 20 minutes of the warm-up session remaining. Alex Brundle.
Well, he's done plenty of laps around here. Of course, he was going to double up and compete in the historic long-distance race yesterday afafternoon in a Porsche 911.
Former class winner here.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, he's stepping up to the top class, to SP9. Long-time runner of Mulliner Motorsport, and he's doing more and more historic motorsport. So he's getting, you know, plenty of time, and occasionally he still finds time to go commentating as well. God, what a life.
He's a busy boy, and he's actually very good at all of those things you've just mentioned. Frustratingly for me,
I know.
It's after our jobs as well.
Yeah.
Down the Dottinger Hoor, then, will go the McLaren of Ben Door, not showing any scars at all from destroying one of the traffic cones on the Grand Prix track, and has one of the Ford Mustangs full company on the Yokohama tyres.
We've got sleet falling at Horacht. Thank you, Johannes, for that information. Now, Horacht is the highest point of the Nordschleife, so
do you know,
the rain turning to ice.
I've learnt something this year, because it's not the highest point of the Nordschleife.
No.
Are we at the highest point?
Sabine Schmidt's Curve is the highest point of the Nordschleife. Horacht is named after the mountain Horacht nearby, which is the highest point of this whole kind of near
Where
Eiffel
did you learn
range.
that from?
From this book.
Oh, really?
The
book I
that
refused to buy
every
this year, the Nürburgring 24-hour book. It's got pictures of every single car, no pictures from our commentary
I bet I
box.
can't find the right page now to prove my fact.
Oh, no, you don't have to. We believe you. I mean, why would you lie?
Just to draw attention to myself, really.
I can't believe that start-finish straight is not higher than Sabine Schmidt's Curve, because when you're going along there, the start-finish straight, the track drops away and it starts to ride through the Wiedel chicane. Yes, the highest point it gets at that point, but surely when you come out of Hocheichen onto the start-finish straight, that's got to be the highest point, unless
maybe it's the Nordschleife, therefore, rather than in the Grand Prix circuit. Let me just read the quote to you. Sabine Schmidt's corner, at this point, the highest of the entire Nürburgring, at 632 metres above sea level. The cars leave the Grand Prix circuit. There you go.
There you go. I just want to mention...
This book, by the way, is the 24 Stunden Nürburgring Nordschleife 2025. Tim Upitz.
He's been doing that forever and a day, and it's a day and a night and another day, of course.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not just him that writes this thing.
I hope not.
I deliberately didn't start a collection of them because I would need a house extension and more books, more
time to read.
Yes.
I didn't buy it last year for the 2024 edition because the 2024 edition kind of got red flag very early and then never restarted.
A lot of blank
but
pages.
I've also
at the back of that one.
There's an equivalent for the Nürburgring Langstrecken series, which is the championship annual. That's mega as well.
Yeah, it is.
I need another bookcase for those.
If I live any longer, I'm going to need a house extension for my autocourse collection because that's getting thicker and thicker I just want to say hello to Brian Fenton, who, when I first saw him on the collective chat, I thought I saw Brian Henton. And I thought, oh, it's Brian Fenton. Better to happen now rather than later on. He was talking about the BMW and the clash with the Porsche. Yeah, a little bit of confusion there, a little bit of misunderstanding there as to how we were going to get past one another. But yes, Brian, we were chatting about that, and the words of Hugh Chamberlain will always come to mind with nothing good ever comes out of warm-up. Certainly not for those two.
Well, great running at Misano in Formula 2, Brian, by the way. Oh, no, Fenton, not Henton. Fell down the same trap. Right, who's fastest? It's still Grello, 8 minutes 42, so fully 31 seconds slower than the pole lap. But, of course, that was another day, another time, another ambition. But, of course, that was also on a track in top qualifying 3 where the track was clear. It was literally one at a time racing. No traffic excuses, but every lap, if you're in the top class cars, when everybody is on the circuit, will have obstruction for you. And it's very much drummed into every single driver. They have to come and prove they can compete on the Nordschleife in some of the NLS rounds beforehand to get their permit. Take Max Verstappen. When he arrived, four-time world champion. No, you're not allowed out in the top class car. You've got to prove it in one with lesser performance. Also, to understand the position of not being in a car, pulverising everyone else and powering past, but looking in your mirrors, seeing, understanding the other players in this overall theatre in which we're operating. And I think that is just so sensible, because if you're in the slowest car, you're spending as much time looking backwards as you are forwards. But you just have to stick to your line, Joe. It's something that's drummed into them. Let the faster cars find their way past you, because otherwise, in the world of second guessing, even across a 1 hour race, there'll be some that get it wrong. But across 24 hours, if you're going, I might go over here, I might go over there, that's just asking for disaster.
I just want to mention, if anybody's not caught our coverage for the last couple of days, this is the car that will start on pole position, and it's Mirko Bortolotti doing laps in the Red Bull paint scheme. They're very much Red Bull backed, Red Bull apt Lamborghini Huracan. The sister car kind of looks like it's come from a completely different team, which is in the green and the white, but they are team mates, and they will start on the front row together. It was a Luca Engstler time. I'm not sure who necessarily had Luca's name in the sweepstake to take pole position at this year's race, but he's been doing some excellent stuff in touring cars and is now a masterful driver of a GT3 car.
Yeah, I first saw him racing TCRs for the family team. His father, France, long-time racer, but he just is one of those drivers who each year is getting better and better. I tell you what, though, that is a massive, massive feather in his cap, though. You look at the list of names, you look at the sheer number of cars, even you just take the SP9 Pro class, let alone some of the Pro-Am cars that have clearly got pros in with the AMs. You've still just got rank upon rank of drivers, but he's just got each year he just gets that little bit faster. But, you know, for a German driver on home ground, that was a massive result for him last night. But for Red Bull Team ABS, 84 Huracan GT3 is the one that's in the traditional blue and Red Bull livery. The sister car, as you point out, Johnny, car number 130, metallic green, and Marco Mappelli, I think, was the driver who made that sing yesterday.
Another lap on the Grand Prix track for the 84 Lamborghini, just getting some energy through those tyres before he ventures out. 15 minutes to go in the session, so time running out, and clearly a systems check on the car that will sit on the pole position. Bortolotti, a very experienced driver. You mentioned there a full grid of GT drivers, really are the world's best GT drivers, the world's best racing drivers, period. You know, this is a very, very high standard of motor race that we have here at the Nürburgring, 24 hours. And there's a name there, Thomas Preining in that Manthey car, currently top of the timing sheet, even though we're not really interested at all about the lap times. 8 minutes 42, best time for him, way off the actual pole position time we saw yesterday. However, this warm-up session is all about preparation for the race going forward, and that's why we saw the Lamborghini number 84 just coming out for what I would think is a systems check. Yeah,
and then nobody's going to set a really fast lap. There's a slow zone still waiting for that blue and yellow Toyota Supra to be pulled away, the one that we talked about with the left rear tyre just coming off the rim. But now it's also, we have seen a few windscreen wipers on. That was about 5 minutes ago, but that seems to have stopped. Windscreen on Grello, absolutely the windscreen wiper vertical up the middle of the windscreen, but definite slippery track at certain points. And Thomas Preining there, little snap to the left, snap to the right, controlled it. Always take a look at the clothing of the marshals. Have they got their full wet weather jackets on top? And just think for the moment, a circuit that's 25 kilometres along, think how many marshals are required to run an event like this. I did have the fingers, but they're not to my fingertips. But it's also how the marshals get to some of those marshal posts. Some of them are effectively just in front of them, they have a barrier. Behind them, they have a forest. And in fact, we had a driver yesterday who got out of his car, climbed to safety over the barriers, and then slipped on the grass bank behind and sort of went missing. And when the rescuers came, they couldn't find a driver until he went, I'm over here.
I'm in the trees.
Yes.
I'm in the trees.
So enormous drop-offs at various points. And I must say, this year, we've got some new camera angles that just, I mean, for years, when you get a helicopter shot, if it goes to a certain height, you can't see the circuit. Then he comes down a little bit, you see a little snake of tarmac going across the landscape. But it's mainly woodland here in the Eiffel Forest. But today, this year's shots, and I hope we get to see them through the course of 24 hours, some of the high-up shots just position the track even more magnificently. Clouds way below some of the highest points of the track that may or may not be at the Huracan.
I can't help but wonder what it would have been like if we'd had this television technology in the 1970s when the Formula One German Grand Prix was being run.
Stop it, Joe. My mind has travelled there immediately.
You can kind of do it with race sims. You can kind of emulate it, but the kind of TV coverage we have at the Nürburgring. Back in the 70s, the German Grand Prix would be run from the pit straight and then go to the helicopter camp. And then pretty much follow the cars around via helicopter. Much more technology allowing us to go on board. I mean, how lucky are we to be living in these times where, one, you can turn your tyre warmer oven on from the breakfast at the hotel, from the breakfast table at the hotel, but also we can go in car and in helmet with some of the drivers, but in car at the moment with the fastest car out there, who appears to be tippy-toeing around this section of track. And I think where are we at the moment? Are we heading towards the Klaris? We've just come out of Bergwerk.
Kesselchen now, Klostertal about to leap into sight. That's the tighter left-hander, and yes, then the run into the carousel.
This section here is usually flat chart, foot to the floor. We're just steering the car through those curves. However, you saw how tentative that Thomas Preining was, or you heard how tentative Thomas Preining was on the throttle there, just tippy-toeing through.
Catching the sight of another Z4. This is the number 40 entry for Peter Pozovac in the WIS racing team E89 Z4. So different vintage of Z4 as well within this race, not only visiting these former GT3 machines.
And it's also rather fitting another driver in that car is Volker Tricek, for so many years raced a car that was sort of out of kilter.
Yeah, well, there's the Foxdale, in fact.
And he has got the Foxdale, exactly about to point that out. So the Wiz entry, but very much tiptoe. I'm just trying to see if that is a full-on slow zone. It's still going past that yellow and blue Toyota, so the driver thought he was doing the right thing by pulling to the side of the circuit. As soon as you clear that, you get the green flashing LED board, and that means you can go back up to full speed, but that's definitely spiking the guns. And Joe was just pointing out that was a sensible thing. If you've got a tyre coming up and you've got, well, about a third, if not 40% of the lap still to go, you don't want to be rattling it back to the pits and have that coming off. But so he moves it to the side, but not near any access roads, so they can't get the car from out off the track. Well, it's on the verge, but through the barriers. So that is why the slow zone's there. We've got 20 minutes or so, 10 minutes or so still to go in this 1 hour session. So I don't suppose it's going to be any different. So every single lap will have a slow zone at that point through to the end of this warm-up.
That was Malte Tack, by the way, in the rear-wheel drive VT2 Toyota Supra. He's sharing with Manfred and Matthias Roos, who might again be another dad and lad team. I haven't checked that, but two family members of Roos joined by Malte, and sadly they're not going to get their car back before the end of the session. I'm trying to get an update on how bad the damage is on the 24 Lion Speed GP car of Lauren Heinrich, which has not reappeared after making it back to the pit lane after it clashed with the 277 BMW 318 from the SP3 division. That happened just before the turn-off at the end of the Grand Prix track and over the bridge towards Sabine Schmidt's curve. There is a brief glimpse of the M3 Touring, which Hugo de Wilde has just been doing some laps on the Grand Prix track in. In fact, he hasn't been out on the Nordschleife. In fact, that car's not done much mileage in warm-up, maybe just a single lap around the Grand Prix track, and they're happy with that.
Yeah, if you haven't picked up on that across the course of this year, it's a very clever project. M3 Touring, the estate model of the BMW M3. They've got the bodywork. It's an M4 GT3 car underneath with various tweaks. Can't run in that particular class. It's in a specials class, but it's drawing so much attention. It's a sort of dream car. You know, if you're looking, you see someone's dream car created by AI out on social media. This is in the flesh itself. This is far better.
Didn't it grow out of an April Fool?
It did.
So they initially put this idea on the 1st of April to say, oh yeah, we're going to go and race an estate BMW car at the Nürburgring 24 hours. It was last year, in fact, so April Fool last year. And the fans went absolutely crazy for it. Many of them believed it, and they went, oh, blimmin' heck, we are actually going to have to build this thing now. And the M4 chassis is more or less perfect for it. So yeah, we've got a BMW estate car in the following of the Volvo 850 of the BTCC of years ago, and there are other stories of it as well. Honda Civic, I think, we used to have an estate car of that.
They're great cars. They're great road cars, though, the M3 Touring. I mean, very, very fast and loads of room in the back to put your large pieces of wood when you go to the DIY shop, and no indicators on them apparently, from what I can see.
Now I'm not a BMW driver anymore. I can laugh at that.
I'm reminded of the Subaru Levorg as well. That Ash Sutton won the BTCC.
That's right. That was in the state, wasn't it?
Yeah, sort of. But you know, could it take your book collection to the dump while you're away at an event? I hope not.
We need Mercedes to bring the shooting brake. That's what we need. We need a shooting brake, which is the estate,
Yes.
which is the term for an estate car in the Mercedes range.
Yeah.
Don't know why it's called a shooting brake. What on earth does that mean?
I never really worked out why they were called station wagons as well.
Yeah, that's the American.
I know it's the American one. If you got one, you've got to be semi-timbered on the side. The Ford LTD
yeah.
from the 1970s, sort of metallic mid-green with the bands on the side. Right, one of the cars we haven't seen too much or talked about too much is KCMG. Hong Kong-based team, but long-time participants in the Nürburgring 24 Hours and the Nürburgring Langstrecke series. And they've got a guy who has done a considerable number of laps here, a winner in a Ferrari in 2023, one of our favourites, David Pittard. One of our colleagues, Peter Snowden, dubbed the term pitbull for him, which he likes very much, because it didn't matter where he qualified on the grid. Say he was 8th for an LLS race. He was normally 1st or 2nd by the time the cars went through the little loop through part of the Grand Prix circuit and out. But he's a driver who came here and saved his racing career. Someone said, come and race in Germany. He's come across, he's settled here in Germany, and he's done lap after lap here. He's raced Aston Martins, but he is so chuffed to be with KCMG. He says it's a privateer team, but one that's just absolutely got the feeling of a works team. And I tell you what, if I was picking a team, he'd be one of my 4 drivers here, just because he's done every weather condition. He's a great driver, but you know, they're all great drivers, but I just think the maximum amount of Nürburgring experience is irreplaceable.
Yeah. Marek Bachmann's fastest now. Oh, I say that, and somebody else has gone through, because I was about to mention that Maxime Martin has taken over the repaired Winward Racing Mercedes from Maro Engel. There was a thought elsewhere that they might, at the 80 crew, try and cycle through all 4 of their drivers, Engel, Martin, Fabian Schiller and Lucas Stolz, but it's only the 2 drivers that they're going to be able to squeeze through in this hour-long session. So that car's just gone across the line now to do an 8:32.2. But as I say, Marek Bachmann in the Bilstein liveried Mercedes for this year, and the Bilstein colour scheme is the blue and yellow, but it's kind of in Minecraft form this year, with it's very digital, pixelated. But you have to get very close to the car to realise that it's been done cleverly like that. From a distance, it just looks like the sort of standard Bilstein livery, but it's much cleverer than that, as I say, when you can stand next to it in the garage, which is difficult to do, I appreciate. So Marek Bachmann's just done an 8:36.7. Mirko Bortolotti in the 84 Red Bull Lamborghini, the pole-sitting car, at 8:38.2. So we are getting quicker times, as is traditional in the final 5 or 10 minutes of a warm-up session.
Interesting little insight from Ben Green, who's competing in the number 16 Audi with Christopher Haase and Alexander Sims. You were talking to Alexander. He said the track's very dusty and dirty after all the cars and fans were on the track overnight. Imagine that.
Of course.
That is an issue. You don't think about fans spilling over and walking around the track and painting their names.
The track, don't
they do.
They graffiti the track. It's a tradition here.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened down at the bottom of the Grand Prix track last night, as I well know, is the Falcon Drift show. So a load of Falcon rubber was put down.
Not in the right places.
Not on the racing line. Exactly. Because they're kicking the tail out, on the extremity of the track. So loads of grip on that high line through what I can now call, again, the Goodyear carer. I had to wipe that from my brain because the drift show is sponsored by a different tyre manufacturer. But Goodyear carer is going to be all over the place for the first few laps. We had rain overnight. And actually what they try and do is scrape some of that tyre, the burned tyre on the road surface, off again. But I said, to Marcus of the Falcon Drift Show, I said, is there some sort of solution that you can put down to loosen that? He went, no, you just get a load of brooms and you just sweep and hope that some of it comes up. But that's going to be there for the first few hours, certainly, of the race.
Right, just had a little look on the entry list. We have 161 cars. We have had 103 out on track, but of those, only 68 have actually gone out around the Nordschleife and set a time. But cars can still go out for the next 2 minutes and a bit, 3 minutes and a bit. As long as they're out on the track, they can then head out. So we could have another sort of 18 minutes until the last of the cars comes back round to cross the start-finish line. But certainly for the Grello, the Manthey Racing number 911 Porsche, sitting a little bit further away from where are we? They're down in 4th place now, but they look like a team that sort of got through its checklist. They may scramble someone out in the next couple of minutes, but I don't think so, looking at the body language of the mechanics working there. But they're there or thereabouts, which is precisely where they need to be.
Robin Cherzanovsky's just gone quickest in Cup 2, which I hope is a class we're talking a lot about during the race. The Klickversicherung.de Porsche. Cup 2 is exclusively for Porsche Carrera Cup cars. Entry a little lower than it has been in the past. I think it's 11 in the Cup 2. Cup 3 for Caymans is far more subscribed. But it always generates a terrific race, that, because of the mixture of driver ratings that you need in your combination, and they somehow have a habit of finding one another in the closing hours as well. So what we're doing here, Joe?
So what we're doing here is we have just bedded in a set of brake discs and pads. Now, what do we mean by bedding in? You basically have to match the pads. We're watching the work going on the 911 numbered Porsche, the Grello Porsche, fan favourite. And it's all the way around the car, all four corners. We basically send the car out on a set of brake discs and pads, and in the process of driving around the track and using the brake pad wears to the disc to be a perfectly flat match against the disc. So those brake pads that you take off will go away and be put on a shelf with that brake disc that it's been matched to. I have a very funny story about running Martin Byford, who was a very, very quick racing driver in a Formula Ford for Gateshead College. And he said to me, "Where's our match discs and pads?" And I pointed at a box which just had a load of brake pads in it. And I just said, Who do you think we are? Manor Carling Motorsport? This is Gateshead College. But that's the point. And this is the attention to detail that we've got out there. We want to maximise the braking efficiency by bedding in those discs with those pads. So we've now got those pads and discs that have come off the car. That'll go on a shelf and will be used sometime during the race. Now that technology of how those brakes wear changes from year to year to year, and the changes of brake pads and discs that we see at 24-hour races have decreased over years. We used to see 24-hour races where you'd need at least 3 or 4 or 5 sets of brake pads and discs. Now you can barely get through a 24-hour race with 1 change or maybe 2 changes in 24 hours.
Yeah.
A 12-hour race, a set of brake pads will last you 8 hours. So where do you change, going through that 12 hours? 24-hour race, we probably get through. The Nürburgring's a different kettle of fish altogether, so I'm not quite sure. And obviously cars use their brakes in different ways, but you try to decrease the amount of pit stop time that you have in any kind of endurance race. So that's basically the idea, and that's basically what the 911 Porsche team were doing with those brake discs.
Yeah, and what you have, for example, in the all GT3 Spa 24 Hours, obviously a different circuit, but again an epic circuit, there is a mandatory pit stop, a longer pit stop, which again has a minimum time. Off the top of my head, it's a 5-minute pit stop in which you must do a brake change. So rather than coming in and be allowed to change them as fast as you can and park back out, they say everybody has to do one. Let's just call it 5 minutes. But you have to do it. But you almost feel as brake technology advances, will we get to the point they don't need them? Don't need a brake change. But you don't want to be... It's like you need a whole number. You don't need a sort of a fraction, do you? I almost made the end of the race. So I think it's way better to just say, right, you're all doing it. Of course, they all have to anyhow. It's just sort of making it a little more mandated. That
mandatory stop that you mentioned there, Bruce, based on safety, I would imagine.
Oh, entirely.
Behind that.
Yeah. You don't want someone cutting a corner and then, in the final half-hour race going, I've just pushed it too far, and then having a monumental moment or worse, because the brake's just effectively not there. Just, did you read out the comment about the Lion Speed Porsche?
I haven't yet, but I'm about to. The Lion Speed Porsche, we're very grateful to hear, the number 24 car, again, because there are a few. The 24 car that was being driven by Lauren Heinrich at the time and clashed with the 277 BMW from Cup 3, not seriously damaged in that collision. Obviously, it won't resume warm-up because warm-up has now ended officially, although if you're on a lap that you've begun before the checkered flag is shown, you are allowed to complete that. The other interesting thing here, this is a message from Richard Crail, who is the voice of the Bathurst 12 Hours every February, sometimes in January, but mainly February. Regarding the BMW M3 Touring, I'm told to tell BMW that their touring wagon would be very, very welcome at the Bathurst 12 Hours, and they have a history of running a similar car. The Commodore wagon has actually run in the Bathurst 12 Hours in previous years. So, once it's done here at the Nürburgring, maybe the Bathurst 12 Hours in 2027.
Well, bear in mind that the Bathurst 12 Hours has a very strong link with this. These are 2 of the 5 rounds of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. And it's not about... Crailsy, I'd love to come down in January, February, to check out the conditions in Australia. But Bathurst, epic race as well. But what a mix. If you think you can race the classic circuits in 1 year, but the Bathurst 12 just goes from strength to strength. And and again, I've always been a fan of an estate car. I call them estates, not station wagons, frankly. But you sure it was a Commodore? It might have been a Tirana before that. Okay. But I don't think it was. I'm sure it was in latter days.
By the way, the next year's Bathurst 12 Hours, which will again be the first round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, 11th, 12th, 13th and 14th of February. So that means race day is Valentine's Day. Take your girlfriend. She'll love it.
Gift.
Or the girlfriend may take the fella up to the top of the mountain.
Yeah, leave him there.
Nowhere. In front of the telly. Yeah.
Get it in the diary. It's always one of the standout events of the endurance calendar, as this is, of course, and with the 24 Hours of Le Mans just around the corner as well in pretty much a month's time. This is the sliding scale. This one moves around, and of course last year was the very next weekend after the 24 Hours of Le Mans, when we had slightly warmer temperatures. I think it's fair to say last June.
This one follows a public holiday here in Germany, doesn't it? It's a Corpus Christi weekend,
it's not always
after Ascension Day, which is so many days after Easter.
40 days after Easter,
which floats around.
But it's not always Ascension Day. It can be Corpus Christi as well.
Right.
But the way that the German bank holidays work, and I think the same in the Netherlands and other countries as well, they happen on a Thursday. Then you need to book Friday off with work, and then you come here for 4 days of madness.
And build your grandstand and your contraptions that you're going to watch from or shelter from. We'll no doubt, if you get a chance to check out the live stream, we'll be getting some camera shots of the fans out there. And you know what? The weather has been deplorable. Anyone with any sense is not here. They're at home, tucked up.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, present company maybe not accepted.
But have you seen anybody in the crowds not smiling? They're all just having the best time.
All drunk, Bruce. They're all on beer. They're all drinking gallons and gallons of beer. Have you seen the stuff that goes out there?
Medicine.
What is even more incredible than the fans building their structures and their campsites is that by the time we finish this race, they'll have already started to dismantle. By the time you come back here on Tuesday or Wednesday, there will be 0 traces of anyone being out there in the forests and
all the rubbish is cleared.
Sites.
Everyone has to clear up. They do a fantastic job.
Incredible.
Here's Dorian Boccolacci in I was talking about the Dunlop car not too long ago, earlier on in warm-up. So this resplendent in its yellow and black Dunlop livery, obviously running on the Dunlop tyre as well, which in global motorsport has sort of disappeared in certain areas and has been replaced by the umbrella company of Goodyear, but it's excellent. I'm a West Midlander at heart. I was born in Birmingham, so it's good. 17 and 44 run out of the same outfit, Schnabel, but it's going to be interesting to see how they both get on comparatively now in this new venture. This has been the case since the start of the year, and sadly that first NLS race that actually didn't happen in the end, but these two cars were here back in April.
It's funny, when I looked to see what livery they had, I expected it to be yellow, black, as it is, but red as well, because Dunlop over the years have often had a lot of red on their cars, but this one very much yellow and black, and one of the few cars still coming round to complete another flying lap. Fastest lap, 8 minutes 32. That's the number 80 Mercedes, of course. That was the one that got damaged and rebuilt for Winwood Racing. Second fastest, Marek Bachmann doing the best time for another Mercedes, 8 minutes 36. But best time for, I would suggest, this Dunlop car from Schnabel Engineering is probably about to come now, but then it doesn't really matter if it doesn't, because that's not what it's all about. But over the start-finish line, it goes. And it does improve, but Dorian Boccolacci just outside the top 10, 8 minutes 51. So just bear in mind the pole lap was 8 minutes 11, 3 cars in the 8 minutes 11. Goes to prove there was a slow zone on the circuit, but it wasn't about going for the ultimate time or taking risks. A couple of cars got a little bit damaged in this session. Some didn't go out at all, but sensible warm-up.
104 cars have actually tripped the timing beam, which means they've come out of the pit lane, but they've got an option to come around on and stay on the Grand Prix stretcher or come into the pit lane. Only 69 cars of that 104 have actually ventured out onto the Nordschleife. So morning warm-up being all about systems checks, and undoubtedly the cars that have just gone around the Grand Prix track have done just that. They've made sure that whatever has been bolted back together after the cars have been been serviced overnight, that they've remained bolted together, and there's been nothing left untouched and unchecked. So everybody out of that 161 car field, only 104 feeling that they needed to do that.
So through the Michael Schumacher-esque goes Dorian Boccolacci, through the fairly recently renamed Xiaomi curve, which is the left-hander, the slightly tighter left-hander. Michael Schumacher-esque is very, very fast. Then you come through the Falcon Bogen, and the right-hand kink, which is the fastest corner on the Grand Prix circuit, up to the Vidal chicane. We're using the faster version of the two iterations of the Vidal chicane, and Dorian already going down through the box because he's going to be waved by the marshals into pit lane at the end of this Grand Prix lap. Time is already at 0, has been for the last 8 minutes or so, so no opportunity to go back out onto the Nordschleife. There are still 1 or 2, though, that are completing their laps. Most of them are home and dry, and some will need a bit of tender loving care, including the number 24 Lion Speed GP car, but we understand that is totally fixable, and it will be on the grid in time for the 3 o'clock start for car number 24. So it's the 80 Maxime Martin Winward Mercedes number 80, the repaired car that is fastest from Marek Bachmann's Pro Sport AMG. Then Nicky Thiem's Valkenhorst Aston Martin ended warm-up in 3rd ahead of Mirko Bortolotti's pole-sitting Red Bull team Lamborghini. Then the Thomas Preining Porsche from Manthey. Markovits in the Reiter Engineering KTM Crossgrip got as high as 6th fastest. Augusto Farfus in the title defending BMW car number 1. 3/4 of its 2025 race winning lineup is retained in that car. And then we go a little further down the order, just caught sight of Robin Czerzanowski's Click Versiferung Porsche that was quickest in Cup 2, the 919. Very few other Cup 2s posting competitive times, although the 925 from Huber Motorsport ends 34th. 81 is topped by the 75 Max Cruiser Racing Audi, and TCR, the Hyundai that we mentioned for Mark Basseng in the 830 Hyundai Motorsport N livery, doing a 9 minutes 10.4. Cycling through, the quickest BMW 240i was the 658 example. The 240i's run in a very much controlled class 4, exclusively that car, and on a controlled tyre as well. 82 Schroeder-driven Porsche 718 Cayman was the fastest SP7 car, but many of those categories we could give you a class leader, but it may be the case that only one of their member actually competed laps. Nicky Thiem, though, was 3rd fastest. Wonder how this car will get on in the race that begins at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So that is the 34 Valkenhorst Aston Martin, which did not progress into the final 12 that did single that. Oh no, having said that, it did, didn't it? 34. I seem to remember calling Nicky Thiem across the line. Number 34, the Ford Mustangs featured well as well. Marek Bachmann's Pro Sport Racing Mercedes in the Bilstein colours was 2nd fastest and quickest. And I'm sure those mechanics that were up till 2 o'clock this morning repairing the right-hand, so the left-hand side of this car predominantly, but there was damage on the right as well. The exhaust needed to be replaced, and the whole rear left and front left corners of this car, everything has been checked. It is pretty much brand new. It's had to be re-scrutineered, and they have topped warm-up by 4.5 seconds, thanks to the times set initially by Mauro Engel. It was important, I think, to get him back on the horse as quickly as possible after an uncharacteristic mistake, but it can happen to the best of them. And then Maxime Martin did a couple of laps to back that up. And there we go. The scene, therefore, set for, well, a few hours' time, admittedly, for the start of the 54th edition of the ADAC Ravenel, 24 hours of the Nürburgring. The next action here at the track, by the way, is a 25-minute Tourenwagen Legenden race, the legendary touring cars on the Grand Prix track, and that is going to be televised, but not on the English language. Now, in the English language screen, it will be the German version of Nürburgring TV to catch that. And then, obviously, we have the full build-up to the race for this year. But for many teams and cars, a much-needed 60 minutes of running in generally dry conditions, although the track was wet in places. And it was a chilly night for those camping here. It's going to be much the same tonight as well, with a low of 5 degrees expected. That could feel a lot colder as well with the wind and the rain. But leading them out, this wonderful Hyundai development car. Hyundai have come here as a manufacturer to develop their next production engine, which is some statement to this Nürburgring 24 hours to kind of test a new power plant. There was Ben Dorr destroying a cone with his McLaren on the Grand Prix track. Audi number 16, kind of the Four Rings only bullet in the gun this year, but they've got a very strong lineup with Chris Harzer, Alexander Sims and Ben Green. Repaired number 80 car putting in some much needed laps after that. Featured in part in top qualifying too, but was crashed heavily by Mauro Engel. Thomas Preining, who was one of the qualifying drivers in top Q3, also doing some laps as well. And then this awkward collision for the Lion Speed number 24 with one of the SP3 BMWs 277, the Ravenel back car. One maybe trying to complete the Grand Prix lap. Maybe the BMW driver was just trying to make space, but he hadn't realised that Lauren Heinrich was on his outside. The 24 car will be fixed and will be in the race, we are told by the team. Nicky Thiem leaping his way through Flansgarten. Marek Bachmann was quick in the Pro Sport Racing Mercedes number 26. But nobody could stop Mauro Engel and then Maxime Martin in the number 80 car, which looked very sorry for itself yesterday. Bits hanging off it, but tremendous effort from the team. We will see you later on for the build-up to the big race.